Welcome back to Walk and Learn. So glad you could join us today, wherever you might be walking, commuting, or just, grabbing a few minutes. Today, we're going to dive into something it feels like it's constantly in the headlines. Gen Z mental well-being.
Yeah.
We see so much about this supposed crisis, right? These really high levels of anxiety and depression. But I wonder, when we hear those stats, do we just jump straight to crisis? Or maybe is there a more complex story happening? Maybe even, dare I say, an empowering one. Okay, let's really try and unpack this together. Our mission today is to get past those big splashy headlines. We want to look at the whole landscape of Gen Z's mental health over these last 5 years or so. We'll look at the challenges, definitely, they're real, but also crucially, they're really innovative ways of dealing with it, all their approach to wellness and resilience. It's not just about what might be wrong, it's about understanding what's changing and, what's actually working for them.
That's such an important way to frame it. Because the data, when you dig in, it really shows this kind of dual narrative. It's definitely not just a story of decline. We're also seeing this huge increase in awareness, a real proactive engagement with mental health. It feels like a fundamental shift. So today, yeah, we'll look at the numbers, the ones that grab the headlines. We'll talk about the external pressures, which are unique for this generation. And I think most interestingly, how Gen Z is actually responding with like a surprising amount of openness and new strategies.
Okay, so let's kick things off with those numbers then, because they are pretty stark and they really do shape the conversation. Our sources show, get this, 46% of Gen Z have actually been diagnosed with a mental health condition. Almost half. And they're, 27% more likely to say their own mental health is just fair or poor compared to older folks. Plus, 84% of Gen Z themselves apparently believe mental health is a crisis in the US, so they feel it too. Now, when you hear figures like that, it makes you ask, right? Are we seeing a generation that's genuinely more unwell? Or are we perhaps seeing a generation that's just finally feeling able to say, hey, I'm struggling and actually go get help? A generation that's breaking down stigma in a way others couldn't. What's your take?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And if we connect this to the bigger picture, like you said, it completely changes how we should read these statistics. You look at the therapy numbers, 42% of Gen Z are currently in therapy. That's jumped 22% since just 2022. That's huge.
Yeah.
It tells us they are way more likely than previous generations to actively seek support, which points to this massive shift. Thinking back, discussing mental health, let alone seeing a therapist, it was often so taboo, so much shame attached.
Totally.
So, yeah, it leaves us with this really important question.
Yeah.
Does higher diagnosis mean more illness? Or does it signal maybe better health literacy, better access? Or just this incredible generation-defining willingness to engage with treatment, this openness, this sort of comfort with vulnerability and working on it? It really feels like a game changer.
Maybe the crisis is also a kind of reckoning, a path towards better well-being for them in the long run. That distinction feels absolutely crucial, and it forces us to think about the world they're growing up in, which is just incredibly complex. So that leads us naturally to the external stuff, right? The factors really shaping their mental state. And you basically can't talk about Gen Z without talking social media. It really is this double-edged digital sword for them. On one hand, yeah, the sources say 39% report that comparison stress from social media, that relentless highlight reel effect, the pressure, it takes a toll. Definitely. But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe even a bit counterintuitive. They're not just passively soaking it up. A massive 68% actively take breaks from social media specifically for their mental health. And get this, 42% use social media to find medical information. So it's not just that they're digital natives, comfortable online. It's how they're actively adapting, using these tools that can be harmful, but also using them for self-care, finding community, gathering info. Carefully, hopefully. How do you see them walking that tightrope?
It's a fascinating balancing act, for sure. They're kind of masters and victims of the digital age all at once. But it's not just digital, is it? We have to look broader. There are these other huge, pervasive stressors that are really shaping their experience. Economic anxiety, fears about the future. It's not just abstract. It's a real undercurrent. The sources mentioned 22% citing an uncertain future or career instability as a major stressor. And almost 70% feel like money, or lack of it, is a major barrier to their life goals. That's huge.
70%. Wow.
And that goes into work, too.
Wow.
Over 60% feeling work-related stress, anxiety, pointing figures at workload, work-life balance, even bad team cultures.
Yeah.
It's tough entering the workforce right now.
That's such a heavy load. And it feels collective, too, not just individual struggles. Like they're inheriting a world already full of anxiety.
Precisely. And then you layer on top of that these global crises, what you might call generational trauma. These aren't just personal problems. They're shared experiences creating this collective psychological weight. Think about climate anxiety, that sense of dread about the future, feeling powerless,
Yeah.
or the impact of, mass shootings, racial violence, often seen repeatedly online. That hits your sense of safety. And then, of course, the pandemic,
Yeah.
the massive disruption during their really formative years, education, social lives, everything.
Right, right.
These huge, often inescapable issues, they just land differently during those key developmental stages. And what's fascinating here is so many of these big pressures are completely outside their individual control, which makes their proactive coping strategies, their focus on resilience, even more remarkable, frankly essential. They're not just dealing with personal stuff, they're navigating this incredibly turbulent world stage.
You're so right. The scale of those external things is just immense. But what I find genuinely inspiring and hopeful is how they're not just passively coping, they're actively responding. Innovatively, too, they're really engaging with their own well-being. Our sources show a whopping 77% of Gen Z actively doing self-help activities. That's not passive interest, that's commitment. And things like journaling, maybe seen as old school, are popular, but often with a digital twist apps, online prompts, and podcast listening, especially for mental wellness. Apparently, it's soaring among them, which, hey, good for us. They're also really dialed into lifestyle basics: diet, exercise, sleep. They consistently mention these as key coping tools. It's not just knowing it, it's doing it. So it makes me wonder, what are the specific protective factors? What helps some Gen Z folks maintain better well-being, even with all these challenges swirling around? Are there common threads?
Yeah, identifying those protective factors is key because it gives us clues about building resilience. The sources point strongly to social support networks, though for Gen V, that often looks different, right? It blends face-to-face with strong online communities, peer groups built around shared interests or identities.
Okay.
Personal resilience itself, that ability to adapt, to bounce back, is obviously huge. And interestingly, even certain personality traits, like being more extroverted, seem to correlate positively with well-being.
Yeah.
But these aren't just passive things. They often reflect active engagement, reaching out online, finding motivation for that coping strategy.
That's a great point. Resilience as an active thing. And amidst all this, are we actually seeing, well, signs of hope? Is this proactive approach making a measurable difference?
We really are, yeah. There are genuinely encouraging signs in the more recent data. We're seeing reports of mental wellness actually ticking up among Gen Z, and importantly, reported improvements in the number of mental health days they feel they need.
Oh, that's good.
It's a pretty powerful evidence, suggesting that this increased focus on self-care, these adaptive coping strategies, the willingness to get help, it is genuinely developing and making a tangible difference in their daily lives. It suggests that maybe this crisis story is morphing into more of a transformation story.
I like that.
And it's not just about them, right?
Yeah.
If you think about what other generations can learn, Gen Z's openness to therapy, their diverse self-help toolkit, their loud and proud efforts to kill the stigma, these are huge lessons for all of us. They are, in a very real sense, kind of setting a new benchmark for mental well-being in the 21st century.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's try and bring this all together. What does it all mean? When we started this walk, we talked about moving beyond that simple crisis narrative, and I really think we have. Gen Z's mental well-being story is just so much more complex, more nuanced, and honestly more compelling than any headline can capture. It's this powerful picture of a generation facing some truly unprecedented challenges: digital pressure, economic uncertainty, global crises. But through it all, they are showing incredible agency, real adaptability, and just inspiring resilience. They're not just struggling, they're actively reshaping the entire conversation around mental well-being, transforming the approach not just for themselves, but maybe for everyone.
So you've absolutely hit on the key insight there. This generation isn't just reacting passively. They're driving a paradigm shift, a shift in awareness, in access, in care. They normalize the conversations, break down old taboos, seek help sooner, innovate their own coping styles, mixing old and new. It's genuinely an empowering transformation to watch unfold.
It really is. So as you finish your walk, or just go about your day, maybe mull this over. Think about how Gen Z's actions, their openness, their tech savviness in finding help, challenging norms, aren't just changing things for them. How might they be reshaping the mental health landscape for generations to come, and maybe even for us right now? What changes are you seeing in how mental health is talked about or treated around you? And how much of that, do you reckon, is down to this pretty remarkable generation? Thanks so much for joining us on Walk and Learn today. We'll catch you on the next one.